Some people always want to take the shortest path and think shortcuts are always a good idea. I used to think that too, until one night I took an old dirt road and realized some shortcuts can lead straight to disaster. Hi, my name is Fernando Matos, and I'm 41 years old. The story I'm about to tell happened about 18 years ago, when I was working as a cowboy on a large ranch in the state of Tocantins, Brazil. The boss was a rich man, the kind who owned land as far as the eye could see. He didn't pay well and was harsh and rude to the workers. But I kept quiet because I needed to send money to my mother, who depended on me. She was sick, needed expensive medicine, and I was her only son who could help. Back then, I shared a small cabin at the back of the ranch with another worker, a cowboy named Adriano, who had come from Fortaleza and became a close friend. We shared chores, talked about life, and he always gave me advice when I was feeling down. He was the only one on that ranch I truly trusted. The work was hard under the hot sun, and the boss kept demanding more. But like I said, I did everything quietly, helped my mother, saved what I could from my paycheck, and dreamed of the day I'd have enough to leave that life behind. One Friday, things got worse, and that night I almost never made it home. I had finally received my overdue paycheck and needed to go to the city bank to deposit the money for my mother. It was already 3 p.m., and I knew that if I took the main road, I'd get there too late, after the bank had closed. My mother would need the money first thing Monday morning. That's when an old ranch worker told me he knew a shortcut, an old little used dirt road cutting through the forest, cutting the travel time by more than half. He said it was safe and that if I followed his directions, I'd come out straight in the city. I got on my old motorcycle and followed the road, following that man's instructions. At first, the road was fine, and I could ride without problems. There were abandoned small farms on both sides, and old houses people had left behind when they moved to town. Eventually, I came to a fork he hadn't mentioned. I followed my instincts and took the right path. It seemed the obvious way. I rode on confidently, but further ahead, I realized something was wrong. I'd been riding that dirt road for over an hour and still hadn't reached the city. That's when I knew I wouldn't make it to the bank on time. And as if things couldn't get worse, the bike started acting up. It was losing power, stalling, and I had to keep pushing it and giving it a kickstart. Then it died completely, right in the middle of nowhere. I tried everything, but it wouldn't start. Only then did I realize I was in serious trouble. From there to the ranch was about 45 kilometers, and I had no idea which direction the city was. I shook the tank and finally realized it was out of gas. The fuel gauge was broken, and I had little experience with motorcycles. I messed up. I looked around, and all I could see was forest, the sun already low in the sky. I decided to head back to the ranch because I couldn't just sit there and hope for luck. I hid the bike in the brush and walked for about an hour when I spotted an old house tucked among the trees. A simple little house partly hidden by the vegetation. I approached slowly and saw it wasn't abandoned. I knocked on the door, and an old man appeared. He was tall, thin, wearing worn-out clothes, and had a long beard. He looked me over silently, and I explained that my motorcycle had run out of gas and I needed a place to spend the night. He stared at me for a while, then opened the door and gestured for me to come in. Inside, the smell was strong and unpleasant. The house had few pieces of furniture, all old and worn. His clothes hung on lines inside the house. He offered me a chair near a wood stove and said I could stay until morning. His voice was hoarse and slow, as if he hadn't talked to anyone in years. I thanked him and sat down, relieved I wouldn't have to sleep in the forest. The old man roasted a piece of sun-dried meat and made an herbal tea for me. I accepted because I was hungry, but he didn't eat anything. I thanked him again, and he just watched me eat slowly, the meat surprisingly good. I tried to make conversation, asking if he lived there alone, but he replied in few words. He said he had lived there for many years, didn't like the city or visitors, and preferred to stay away from everyone. Later, when night fell, he said I could sleep in a back room. He handed me a blanket and showed me a hammock he had tied inside the room. It was torn, but better than nothing. I thanked him again and lay down, but I couldn't sleep. Something about that house made me uneasy. The way he looked at me, the strong smell from his room, the isolation, everything gave me a bad feeling. I lay there for a while, but the discomfort only grew. A strange feeling took over me. Something told me it wasn't safe to stay there. That's when I looked out the window and saw a large mango tree behind the house. Automatically, I decided I would climb it and spend the night up there. I grabbed the hammock and blanket, got up slowly, opened the window carefully, and went out into the yard. The full moon was huge in the sky, lighting everything brightly. The mango tree was tall, with thick branches. I climbed to a secure spot where I could hide among the leaves but still see the yard and the house. I tied the hammock between two branches and stayed there, watching, trying to figure out why I was so nervous. Hours passed, and I started to calm down, thinking my fear was just paranoia. I was about to consider coming down when I heard the back door creak open. The old man stepped into the yard. He walked slowly, looking at the sky and the full moon. He stood there for a few minutes, and then something happened that froze me with fear. He began to groan, a low sound that grew into a growl. He muttered strange words I couldn't understand. His body twisted, and I watched him fall to his knees. The transformation was fast and terrifying. Bones cracked, his body stretched, limbs elongated. In seconds, where there had been an old man, now stood a massive, monstrous beast. It was a terrifying werewolf. I knew it for sure. The beast reeked, its body covered in dark fur, its paws huge with claws gleaming in the moonlight. Its head was elongated, ears pointed, mouth full of enormous teeth. My heart raced, and I curled up, trying not to make a sound. The beast sniffed the air, growling low. It paced the yard in circles, as if searching for something. Then it stopped in front of the small room where I had stayed. The werewolf growled loudly and smashed the door with a single swipe of its paw. I heard angry growls and thudding noises against the walls inside the room. The beast was furious it couldn't find me. It left the room and began sniffing the yard again, getting closer and closer to the tree where I was. I stayed completely still, holding my breath. The beast passed right under the mango tree, so close I could hear its heavy breathing. At one point, the werewolf lifted its head as if it sensed something, then moved away toward the woods. I spent the entire night in that tree, frozen with fear. Every sound made my body tense, thinking the creature had found me. I watched it go back and forth, always growling, always searching. Only when the sky began to lighten and the first rays of sun appeared did the werewolf run into the woods. I waited until the sun was fully up, sure it was safe. I climbed down, legs trembling, and ran as fast as I could. I ran along the dirt road until I reached the main road at the fork where I had gotten lost. When I was tired, I slowed down and walked. I only got back to the ranch around noon. Luckily, the boss was traveling. Otherwise, he would have yelled at me for disappearing. A week later, Adriano and I went back to that place. We went during the day, armed. When we arrived at the house, the door was open, swinging in the wind. We went in slowly and saw everything empty. No furniture, no clothes, nothing left. The back room was destroyed with claw marks on the walls and the door broken. We looked for the old man but found no one. It was as if he had never existed. Adriano said it was better to leave and never come back. We fueled the bike and I rode it back to the ranch. Adriano left on his horse, and mine, very gentle, followed them. Soon after, my mother recovered, and I left that ranch to work closer to her. Since that day, I never take shortcuts. Every time I see an old, deserted dirt road, I remember that night and the old man who turned into a werewolf under the full moon. There are paths we shouldn't follow, even if they seem faster, because there, you might meet your end.